Trump travel ban version 2 is here. What is different this time?
The first is that the Syrian refugees, they're not facing an indefinite suspension on their ability to apply for visas. There is a 120-day suspension that applies to all refugees. But unlike the first ban, there is no blanket proposal for Syrian refugees. This ban applies to 6 Muslim majority countries, and Iraq, which was a part of the first travel ban, has been dropped. Mainly because Iraqi government has given some assurances about working along with the US for vetting of applicants. Also, some people have noted that the new order doesn't refer to any particular religion. The first order, people had made it seem as if it allowed Christian refugees from countries where they were a minority to be given preferential treatment, and that also strengthened the impression that this order was a Muslim ban.
If it is not about Muslims, if it is only about terrorism, the immediate question that comes to mind is the people who have attacked the United States in the past come from certain countries. They have origins in certain countries which are not in the list. If it is all about terrorism, for instance, the San Bernardino shooting, Pakistanis, the 9/11 attacks, Saudis and Egyptians, and the Orlando attack, an Afghan.
Well, it's a complicated issue, right? I mean, Afghanistan is a country that remains very key to the US plans for this region. Don't forget, they have almost 10,000 troops still in Afghanistan, and President Trump hasn't really indicated what his Afghan policy is going to be. I think for that reason, they are not going to go hard on Afghanistan. Afghanistan is also an ally in the fight against terrorism. There are people who think that Afghanistan could play a role in tackling the Islamic State, but it really is a big question mark why countries such as Pakistan and Saudi Arabia haven't really been mentioned in both the travel bans. These are 2 countries which have been linked to several terrorist attacks on US soil and in Western countries. For far too long, Pakistan has been portrayed as a close ally in the war on terror. But there have been changes in the recent past. America has sharply cut down any funding for Pakistan. There are other changes. The military equipment, their supplies have dried up. So we need to see where Mr. Trump is going to go with as far as his Pakistan policy is concerned. But it is a very valid question why these countries are not in the travel ban if you're actually looking at countering terrorism.
We Indians, somehow it is very strange going by the events that are happening in the US. We really don't need a travel ban. There is already some sort of a secondary sort of inspection happening for select number of people, and there are attacks happening. Some Americans are taking law into their own hand and asking Indians to go out of our country.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's the rhetoric that President Trump has engaged in right from the time of his election campaign, and even afterwards, and especially the rhetoric by both Mr. Trump and his aides on immigration, on refugees, on people who are coming into the U.S. and taking jobs, as he claims, that has fueled some of the incidents that we've seen in the recent past. We've had one attack which led to the death of an Indian citizen. We have had 2 more attacks on American citizens of Indian origin. So these are definitely worrying elements, and there are some people who feel that the travel ban, the first one, kind of set the stage for these sort of incidents. The travel ban sort of fueled the feeling against immigrants, and all this talk about America first and bringing jobs back. I mean, well, it's not as if that the Indians who are working in America are not needed. They are going in there because there is a vital need for engineers. And
there is actually a shortage.
There's a shortage of IT professionals. So, this is a concern that has been taken up by the Indian government. This is something that the American administration will have to look at.
The visa curves and the legislations that are being considered, there is this blockage on the H-1B premium processing. Around the time when Indian government officials went to the US and came back and said that, there are certain assurances. They seem to have given some sort of a positive spin to whatever has happened. What do you think about that?
Well, I think there's still a gap on the issue of H-1B visas and related matters. Clearly, I mean, this is something that the Indian government has taken up at the highest levels because it affects a lot of people in India. But it's again very, very obvious that the U.S. has its own way of thinking. That was very evident from the suspension of the premium processing of H-1B visa applications. So it's clearly that it seems to be the case that the Trump administration is going to do something about the H-1B visas. We still don't know what direction it's going to take. Hopefully, the Indian government will be able to convince them not to make it a very strong measure that could affect a lot of jobs, that could affect a lot of people in India. But clearly, the two sides haven't as yet reached common ground, and I don't think it would be very accurate to paint a very rosy picture right now.
The video from Ohio of by a stalker of Indian community members just hanging out in a park. It has come out, and it was actually published on YouTube sometime in August when the presidential race was going on. Is it normal or is it a hate crime? And which way do you think it should be considered?
Well, these are all indicators of the kind of hatred and the kind of incitement that is beginning to develop. I mean, look at the case of Srinivas Kuchibhotla. I mean, before he was killed, the man who shot him said, "Get out of my country."
Yeah.
In the case of an American citizen of Indian origin who was shot but survived.
Yeah.
I mean, again, he was told, "Get out of my country," but
Yeah.
then that was his country.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this stalker, again, these are all the parts of this trend that is emerging and that the US administration doesn't really seem to be addressing right now. Race relations has been a problem right from the end years of the last Obama administration. At that stage, it was primarily, between the white majority and the black minority. But now this seems to be spreading to other minorities. That needs to be nipped in the bud. This is something that the Indian government is concerned about. Two of the incidents involved American citizens, as I said, but that didn't stop the Indian foreign minister from tweeting about these incidents. So that clearly shows that it has struck a chord among all Indians, and this is something that needs to be tackled.
That was our quick take on the fate of Indian immigration in the light of the Trump travel ban version 2. Thanks for watching.